What is up guys? Now surprisingly, one of the videos I get asked to update the most is my underrated video. So here we go, here's my top secretly strong champions that you could spam to climb solo queue. Now I've deliberately picked champions who aren't that popular but can single-handedly carry a game, and I'll give you the basics of how to play them as well. Now first up is Vega or Vega, however you want to say it. I'm going to go with Vega this video, so please no hate, okay? Now Vega has a really good mix of crowd control and damage. He can practically one-shot people with one item, and when you combine that with 2.5 seconds stun on his cage, that is ridiculous. Now at level 6, he can win his lane easily, he can control objectives with that cage, he can set up team fights by catching people, and one of the best things is if you position correctly in team fights, you can instantly make it a 4v5 by blowing your load on someone. Now the cage means he's pretty safe. If you get ganked, you can just drop it and run away, and the cool thing is, especially at lower elos, is people will underestimate your damage and try and take advantage of you. I have lost track of the number of times a jungler like Lee Sin or someone has tried to gank me and I stun him, I use my rotation and actually kill him before I just waddle away. Now your role is to kill people, right? So you want to rush a Deathfire's Grasp and then normally get a death cap afterwards to make sure you 100% someone in team fights and always give your team the advantage. Next up is Wukong, and I mainly play him in the jungle, but he's pretty good top lane too. Now Wukong has a lot of damage and he's tanky with his passive, meaning he can dive into fights with his ultimate and be so effective. I said in my tips for solo queue video that the crowd control wins games, and honestly Wukong probably has the best combination of damage and CC of any jungler right now. His stealth on his W is a great way to engage, he has an okay clear speed, good ganks though, and he is really good at picking fights with that ultimate. One of the really cool things with his passive is that it means you can build more damage and still be tanking, meaning you can actually carry easier by killing everything while spinning around in circles. The reason I think he's actually underrated is because you can engage for your team and kill people at the same time. Now picking fights and catching people is a great way of carrying your games, and then you have this added damage. I normally always rush a Black Cleaver because the armor shred applies with your ultimate and it means you are reducing everyone's armor around you, and that will help you and your team do a lot more damage. Okay, so this next pick is mainly for top lane and we're going to look at Diana. Now you can also play her mid, but I'm not talking about just Diana as a champion here, but it's the build and playstyle that I think is underrated. Now Diana has a ton of base damage on her abilities, which means that you don't really need many items to kill people, and that's what makes her a really strong laner. Now the playstyle I think that's underrated is more of a tanky damage mage that is diving into fights to initiate, and a lot like a Maokai I guess, but it's just with more damage. Diana snowballs really hard. She has a huge gap closer, a shield, AoE crowd control, and once you get a few items you can probably one-shot the enemy AD carry in team fights. I said earlier, right, with Wukong, a good way of carrying solo queue is catching people and picking fights, and Diana is really good at that with her gap closer and her crowd control. So Rod of Ages makes you tanky, it gives you sustain for lane and a lot of damage too, and when you combine that with the Zhonya's and Abyssal, you will do huge amounts of damage and be really hard to kill as well. Staying with the top lane, we're going to look at Swain. I mean, that's where I would choose to play him in top, but you can also play him mid as well. He's a very good laner, he has a great team fight, he reaches a point where he becomes unkillable, and if you win your lane, it's really hard for the enemy team to shut you down. You can easily 1v2 if you get ganked with your sustain and damage, and it creates a situation where you can just push and keep punishing the enemy top laner. Swain is actually an odd case because I've been saying for ages he's underrated. He's always had a good win rate in solo queue and he's just never really been played. So in team fights or when you're dueling someone and you have your Zhonya's, you'll get low and then be like, alright, time to turn into a golden bird and just get back all of my health while you can't touch me. It's just stupid. That's why I say Rod of Ages into Zhonya's is core build for him, because it makes you really hard to kill while it makes it pretty easy for you to kill everyone else. Okay, now I know I trolled you guys before by joking about putting Fiora in my top 5, but I am honestly not trolling you this time, okay? The last champion I think who's underrated is actually Fiora. Now she's been sitting in the top 10 solo queue win rates across EU and NA this season. I think right now she's sitting at number 5 or something, but let me just explain why. She's basically the answer to the TP meta. She's very strong in lane, meaning that if you don't have a combat summoner to fight her with, then she's just gonna flat out beat you. So once Fiora does get that lead, she has a huge amount of damage. She can chase you for ages and dive you with her ultimate while taking no damage. So kind of think of her like the AD version of Akali, but who can also dive you when you're at 100% health and she's still going to get out alive. Honestly, when Fiora snowballs, it is disgusting, but I have to put her last on this list because, well, if you get behind on her, then you're about as useful as a paper bag with a hole in the bottom. You're gonna do nothing. There's no room for being scared on Fiora though. You build damage, more damage, and then finish off your build with some more damage. She's risky and harder to pick up and play than the others on this list, but she is good right now and she can win games by herself. When I was researching this video, there are actually a lot of champions I think who are underrated right now, but these are probably the top 5. And remember that if you learn a champion well enough, then you can win games with anything. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you did and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.